All right, pushing the buttons. Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and today I am joined by two of the three Black Halflings podcast. How you guys doing today?
So good.
Yeah, doing great. Having a great time.
If you guys would be so kind to introduce yourselves and kind of like a little bit about yourselves for people that aren't familiar.
I am Luyando Unati Lewis Nyawo, but everybody calls me Unati. I'm 1/3 of Three Black Halflings, a TTRPG podcast focusing on diversity and inclusion. We also have a couple of actual plays and stuff. And I'm an actor, voice artist who stumbled into the great world of Dungeons and Dragons and has now been teleported into the land of podcasting by two lovely gentlemen. And I like making scary things and rolling dice with my friends and cats.
That is a very accurate description of yourself. I am Jeremy Cobb. I am also an actor. I got into D&D a few years ago. I got into the world of podcasting through it was like a combination of D&D and acting. I'm also part of Three Black Halflings podcast, and I guess all I would add to that is we also talk about just general nerd stuff and pop culture stuff. And also we give out like DM tips and it's just it's all kinds of stuff on the show. It's a whole range. Yeah. It's a real mishmash.
And we're hella black. I mean, I've even got my bonnet on right now. Like I put makeup on, but I left my bonnet on because my hair's in twists. So.
Oh, and we're all UK based. That's another thing. Yeah, I'm an American, but I'm a dual citizen, and I'm based in the U.
I'm South African, and I'm an immigrant.
Yeah, and our third member, who was unable to be here, is actually just British.
There's a surprising number of South African D&D content creators.
Yeah, I discovered this when I went onto YouTube, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of you, because I can hear the accent immediately, and I'm like, wow, yeah. There's
like us Americans, we have no idea that it's a South African accent, I think, for the most part. Or it's just like everyone is just either Australian or from the UK. But as I started making friends with more and more people, I was surprised. And also, like, it's also not an easy hobby to get into in South Africa, especially if you're going back a few years.
Yeah, just getting the source books and just getting anything into the country, especially after the post office went belly up, is just an absolute nightmare. I suppose, like, now that a lot of things have moved online, but I suppose, I mean, we had like, there's at least one comic book nerd store in each major city, and then trying to find other nerds who want to play with you is also a bit tricky. You have to find them around the comic book store, and they organize Warhammer and D&D events, and they're very intense, and they're very scary, and very cliquey, and usually really tall and look like Vikings and scare me. So I left them alone.
So
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, for the people listening, like, how did you guys get started with the D&D podcasting?
As I said before, I got into D&D at the end of 2018 when my friend kind of roped me into playing with him and a couple of other guys. And the first DM that I ever had was actually an anti-racist skinhead, which was a whole experience. But he it was a really fun session. And then I got really, really hooked. I got into like Dimension 20 after that. Then the following year, I started DMing in the spring, and I went and did a play with the other member of our podcast who is not here, Jasper William Cartwright. He had played D&D like once or twice before, but had never really gotten into it. And I had a campaign going with him and like the cast and crew of that play that we did like a whole campaign over the course, over the run of the play. And then after we went our separate ways, Jasper got into DMing towards the end of 2019, which continued into 2020. And then once lockdown hit, he and I decided to bring back the old campaign from our old play that we did, and continued that, and we're co-DMing it, and we kept hanging out and talking about D&D and all the different ideas that we had. And it occurred to him that there was kind of a dearth of I guess Black creator run D&D podcasts. When he looked on YouTube, he typed in like Black D&D, and pretty much what he saw were sketches, and then the one shot that Terry Crews did with Matt Mercer and like the Geek and Sundry people, and that was pretty much it at the time. And so he and I got together and tried recording a pilot episode. We did not know what we were doing at all. He had his phone, he was recording it on his phone, spent the whole thing just gesturing wildly like, yeah, and the audio was all over the place. He had it like under a pillow at one point. You could not hear him. I had my fan on the entire time, so while I'm talking, you just hear like just like drowning me out. And of that, we ended up looking at that pilot and be like, yeah, let's not, this should not see the light of day. We need a third person, and also we need to turn off the fan. And so he had known Unati, I think, from drama school, right?
Yeah. We went to drama school together at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And we remained Facebook friends and social media friends for a bit after that, as one does when you go to college together. And yeah, then I got into D&D about 6 to 8 months before I met these lovely gentlemen, and I was minding my business in my garden, doing washing my green hair and hanging it out to dry on the washing line, as you do after the apple cider vinegar treatment. And I was looking at my source books and hanging out and having a lovely day in the sun, and then Jasper teleported into my garden and then ripped me through the time-space continuum into podcasting, and now my entire life has become D&D. And I love it, and yeah, it's really, really great, and I enjoy playing this game and talking about all this amazing stuff.
Yeah, it's a great hobby. Like it's also very consuming. Like I don't really have time for other hobbies and interests anymore. Everything is pretty much TTRPGs.
Yeah.
You know, I had discovered you guys from T1J. I had watched one of his videos about Dungeons and Dragons, and like he had put out kind of a call for, hey, is there any Black creators out there that I could follow for actual plays and stuff? And you know, 3 Black Halflings came up in the chat, so that's when I decided to reach out to you guys and follow you on Twitter to see what you guys are about. And that's when having you on, I learned you also do more than actual plays. You do advice and stuff like that, and you said pop culture as well. Who's the DM for you guys? Or do you guys take turns or something?
Go ahead.
It's usually Jeremy. But also like sometimes we'll do one shots and we'll swing that around the group. So we have sort of each done one thing, but for our actual plays currently, it is the terrifying, also in air quotes, friendly neighborhood DM, whatever, Jeremy Cobb.
Unati is traumatized at the moment because we're recording an upcoming season of actual play that's going to start coming out later this month, and it's gotten pretty intense. And the whole group, every player now hates me. It's great. It's wonderful. It's brought us closer together. It's brought us all closer together in hatred and fear.
Yeah, we have screenshots of you. Are you aware of this? We've been taking screenshots in game of like whenever we're horrified at something you've done. Just pictures of us like.
that sounds like some good like behind the scenes Patreon content there.
You gotta release these. I need to see.
You gotta release them. I'm pretty sure like we have at least one or two, and I think I'm just gonna keep doing it. Like this is what it's like.
The horrifying moments from each episode. Yeah. But yeah, we it's mainly me on our show, but we do pass things around, and we all like DM home games as well. Unati last year DM'd a 2-part Curse of Strahd like 2-shot. Managed to condense like a huge portion of that.
A little bit of freezage. That's impressive.
Okay.
We just finished Curse of Strahd and it took like a year.
So. Yeah, I just try to find the best bits because it's so big. It's so unwieldy, right? There's just so much. Like, if you take people to the death house, well, that's like 5 hours in the death house.
Yeah.
If you like try go find one of the hags, that's 5 hours. So I was just like, right, we're gonna kill Strahd. Cool. That's the plan. Some flavor, and we're killing Strahd.
Yeah, I think there's I think on the DM's Guild, there's at least one person that's turned it into like a one shot to do it in like one night. So
yeah, absolutely. I think I had a look at that as well. Like, I was doing research, like, how do I like contract this thing and make it make sense, basically. But yeah, like, Jasper's done some really great stuff, and we've had guests on, and we've done really great stuff, and it's always really fun. And we have people get to vote on a bunch of one-shot ideas that we have. And if they whoever wins, I mean, like, some of us are more tied to ones than others, so depending on what's voted for, that'll dictate who gets to, DM one of those next.
yeah, so is it just, and hopefully Jeremy will rejoin us shortly. The internet is doing internet things apparently.
Yeah.
So is it just the three of you that when you're doing the actual play, or do you guys bring other people in?
So yeah, we do bring other people in. Like, for instance, on Wagadu, we were really lucky that we had the creator Alan Caduccio at our sort of disposal, and became the official actual play podcast for that, partnering up with them. And I'm getting word from Jeremy on my phone. Oh, the Wi-Fi at his house just cut out. Okay.
These things happen.
I will continue. No worries. Yeah, so in terms of Wagadu, we had Alan Caduccio on, we had Lou Wilson on. Who else did we have on? Yeah, I think it was Lou Wilson and Alan Caduccio. And yay, am I being saved? I don't have to keep talking.
Hello. Sorry about that.
No worries.
The Wi-Fi at my house completely cut out in that moment. I was like, oh. If it happens again, I have my phone and I will just join via my phone.
Cool.
But yeah, sorry, where were we?
We were talking about Wagadu now, and seeing if other people come on and join us with our actual plays. And I was just mentioning Lou Wilson and Alan Caduccio, but you'll have more insight into that, Jeremy.
Yes. So I had at the end of 2019, wanted to run a campaign in like a setting inspired by Africa, because I was like, hey, wait a minute, all of this stuff is European, and with a smattering of Asian. And I was like, let's just bring in some Africa stuff. And I was looking up like any source books and that sort of thing for like that were inspired by Africa, the continent. And I saw that this thing called like the Wagadu Chronicles that sounded really cool, but they didn't really have much information up yet, and there wasn't anything for me to use. So I was like, well, okay, and I moved on. But when we started doing the show, we were like, okay, cool, let's think of like different guest ideas and different things we can do. And I was like, I remembered the Wagadu Chronicles and was like, guys, we need to look into this because maybe they've released something by now. And it turns out they were about to release something. So we had the creator of Wagadu on our show. He was one of our first guests. In fact, I think his episode wasn't the first one that we released, but I think he was the first guest that we ever recorded with on our show. Alan Caduccio. Shout out to Alan. And from that, we ended up doing a live stream of it was sort of like a one shot set in Wagadu, which is it's like this mystical land. Essentially, the premise is that there's the upper realms, where people have just been living normal lives, but at some point they fell. We're not sure how or why, but they fell like shooting stars and landed in this new world called Wagadu, and no one's sure like how to get back. They only have like patches of memory from their lives in the upper realms, but they're like in this new world. What's interesting is that all of the lineages in Wagadu are human. but they're all like variations on humans. So there's like the Daima, who are like they're like moth people, like they have moth antennae and wings, and they worship goddess of the moon, who is also like a goddess of death. There's the Lion Bloods, who are yeah, they are they're a group people who are like they have like a heavy association with like big cats, and like can literally transform into leopards and cheetahs and lions and stuff. There's the Swala, who are like these shepherd people who all have like antelope horns and like Cape buffalo horns and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. There's the Ikaki fish people. Yeah, I could go on and on, but they're it's like it's almost similar to the Feywild in that it has like its own very defined set of rules in contrast to the rest of D&D. But when we did that, it's a really fun to play in, very new and very, I would say, just a real treat. And like I would say it's very accessible for people who don't even have like a heritage in Africa or anything like that. But it's a lot of fun, and we had a blast playing it. And I think we were the first people ever to live stream playing Wagadu, because they had just released the first free PDF source book called The Child and the Oath, which is still available for free, by the way, on the Wagadu website. And they eventually they hadn't even released their Kickstarter yet, because it's going to be an MMO as well. And so we ended up talking to Alan some more, and we basically worked out a deal to become like the official actual play show for the Wagadu setting. So like what happens in our game is considered canon to the setting. Like it happened like in the past, and some of those characters may even show up in the eventual MMO, which is quite exciting.
It's really great.
But yeah, we had to get Alan on the show. He was he was our first guest that we ever actually had on our show. The Cub and the Caterpillar is the name of the actual play show. And he was absolutely awesome. And then eventually we got Lou Wilson on, which was a blast. And then we got to have them both on at the same time. But that has been that game has just been extremely rewarding, I think, for all three of us.
The level of detail and research that has gone into the building this world, and the art, I mean, it's just exquisite. It's the art's insane. Exquisite. And it's just such a beautiful world to explore, and another way to access like Dungeons and Dragons. It's really great.
And what is the creator's name again? Alan
Cudicio. Spelled Cudicio.
So it sounds like, even when you have guests on, you still run rather small groups.
Yes. Yeah, usually. We have a bigger one for this upcoming season, but yeah, relatively small.
Well, I find it interesting because people, often ask about playing it and they struggle with it. And like, do you incorporate NPCs with the party when you do that? Or you just tell stories according to what, who you have at the table?
I think it really varies. I think it's helpful to have like a third character there just for like the party members to bounce off of, especially since it's for public consumption. It's also for entertainment purposes. Mm-hmm. But like, really what it comes down to is do the PCs want a person to come along with them? So like we have at this point, I would say 1.5 like traveling like NPCs who kind of travel with the party. There's a red colobus monkey named Wenzako, who has befriended Unati's character. And then Jasper's character, Muti, got attacked by a serval because he's a very skinny guy, who mistook him for like a prey animal. And he cast suggestion on this serval, which really, according to the language of the spell, shouldn't have worked, but whatever. He basically charmed this serval and gave it a bunch of food. And so now the serval is traveling with him for the time being. So we have a lot of NPCs that will come in and out, but I don't have like a DM with
the Koei, and then Jasper just did not vibe with it.
So that's how I feel like it should be. It sounds like it's very PC driven as to who's traveling with the party, and that's how it should be. Like all the time, I hear like GMs are like, "Oh, I put an NPC with the party because of reason X," right? And I'm like, you don't really need to do that. The players will figure it out, even if it's a small group. But it's completely different when the players are like, oh, I like this particular character, and they glom on them, or they their story investment in them being there, not to fill, as opposed to like just trying to fill role X.
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been really awkward if I had just tried to be like, this person is with you now, and they're having to like tolerate this presence. It's true. Like Unati's character immediately vibed with that PC or the NPC, but Jasper's character immediately became competitive and was like plotting to kill him at one point. And so he only lasted like a couple sessions with the party before they sent him away. He's still like a friend of the party, but it's unlikely that he'll be like traveling with them regularly anytime soon.
Sounds dangerous.
I think they're bonding though. No, I think it's becoming better. I think it's
true.
On the mend.
Jasper's character has extremely high deception, and I think rolled a natural 20 to lie to this guy, and so has kind of convinced him that he's at least an okay person, and so they're on decent terms now.
He's not actively plotting to murder him anymore.
Hopefully not. I think he's become useful now, so he's allowed to stay alive.
If only all of our friendships could have such high aspirations.
Yeah.
So your more talky type podcasts. What kind of subjects do you like to talk about? What's the flow to those podcasts?
I think because like I think we mentioned earlier, when the podcast kind of started, and we sort of kicked off, I think part of it was also a reaction to what was going on in the world at the time, and it was that summer of 2020, and I think that because of all of like the really intense feelings and anger and depression, it was interesting to find something that brought so much joy to us, and also finding that joy is a valid form of protest, and I guess quite a bit of the podcast is about tackling uncomfortable issues and about shining a light on the lack of diversity, but not just like whacking a stick at it, kind of going, but here is a way to address these issues, always coming in with a solution and always leading with love and leading with open arms and bringing other people into the space and helping everybody better their tables and just better the community in general. And that's not just focused on issues around race. We look at alphabet mafia issues, LGBTQI plus. We also tackle issues around disability. So there's really, in any way that somebody who feels marginalized or pushed out of the community can feel welcomed and brought into the community, we're going to be out there doing that basically as much as we can, and shining a light on the other people in the community who are putting in the work to do that and make things that are compatible with 5e, create content that you can use at your tables to make your tables better and more inclusive.
And within that, I think what helps make the show appealing to people is the fact that we don't take ourselves super duper seriously. While we do treat the topics relatively seriously, we're not sitting there having these really intense dour conversations about like the state of things and wizards and blah blah blah. Like we a lot of laughter, a lot of jokes, a lot of goofs. Half the time we just veer off topic for long stretches, get completely distracted by like who knows what we're even talking about at this point. What did we record? We recorded a Drow episode today, episode talking about like the new changes to Drow lore and just the history history of the Drow and like the whole controversy that has surrounded them for a while. And there was a whole section where we were envisioning like a Drow version of The Wire, where like it was just this really serious, gritty urban drama where the Drow are living in like actual city, like human looking cities just under the earth. And it was like a complete digression, just silly stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I guess, you know, if you don't laugh, you're gonna cry, right? So you might as well try and find the joy and lead with love and bring people into the community. And you know, these two are funny and I laugh all the time. If you want to just listen to me laughing, please feel free.
There's we also do like a couple of segments that we bring back from time to time. We do like a tale from the table where we'll tell like fun stories about like what's been happening in our D&D games recently. We have guests on who will also, we do interviews. We have mentioned that we do interviews.
We do talk
with
to
a whole variety of people,
yes.
but and the guests will all tell tales from the table as well. We do a segment called Wiz of the Rings, where we like recast popular fantasy and sci-fi genre works with like more diverse casts. I think my favorite one was when we were doing Back to the Future with Scott and Frankie from Shoot the Flick, and we proposed the idea of an all Dwayne The Rock Johnson casting of Back to the Future. I still dream. I still live for that day.
Yeah, that would be insane.
I want to see an all The Rock Back to the Future.
It would be good. He is such a phenomenal actor.
Yeah. He'll be able to carry it.
Yeah. And just the charisma.
Oh no, we're getting Robo Jeremy as his Wi-Fi fails him again.
Oh, right. I thought it was my Wi-Fi.
No, I think it was on Jeremy's end.
It's me. Oh, no. My Wi-Fi is it's a cruel mistress, this Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So
it does not treat me right.
It happens. Yeah, we just watched
Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I cannot wait to hear him.
Oh no.
Maybe?
I think he was mentioning the sheer charisma.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's all good.
Yeah.
We got you, Jeremy. We love you, Jer Bear.
You brought backup, so you're good to go.
Yeah.
Am I back?
You are back.
Should I just switch to my phone? Should I switch to my phone at this point?
I think it might be the safest option.
Okay, is that okay, Dave? Is that going to mess anything up?
I don't think so. Nothing we can't fix. So go ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
we just leave it. I'll be back on my phone.
Wow. Just go. Just go. Get out of here. Get out of here and come back with better internet.
Yeah. Go think about what you and your internet did.
Yeah.
So now that we've had Jeremy as a Warforged a bit, we just watched Jungle Cruise the other night.
I haven't seen that yet.
With Dwayne Johnson in it.
Yeah.
It was good. It's a very fun, actiony movie with some good twists and turns.
Yeah.
In it.
It looks like a vibe.
Yeah.
It looks like a really, really cool vibe. Yeah, we bring on like loads of really cool guests. And we chat to them about things. We've had like Brennan Lee Mulligan on, and Zach Oyama, and Christina Ariel, and Tanya DePass, and just like some really cool people in the community. So there's all that content out there. We're shining a light on what they're doing. So check them out. We also do like episodes where we like talk about like POC based content, or LGBTQT plus content as well, that you can check out and engage with, and really just like, you know, keep like bringing more fun stuff to your games, which is good.
Do you have a favorite segment that you guys do?
Do I have a favorite segment? Oh, honestly, like the thing is, like I am planning on studying like African anthropology, so like I really love having the kind of like race theory discussions. Like that's really like my favorite thing, and also because I usually do them with lots of mirth. and like my tongue firmly in my cheek. But I really, really enjoy like unpacking those kinds of sticky conversations and learning, because also at the same time, we're not all just agreeing with each other the whole like time. It's not just a warm bath of accord, right? We are three different individuals who are going to come from different perspectives about a topic, and we give that as much space as possible. And sometimes we don't get it right, and then we learn and we grow. So it's trying to cultivate a safe space for people to be like, it's okay to make a mistake. It's what you do after the mistake that will help you grow or not. It's okay. We're all human.
That's most things in life, right? Like it's
right? Like it's fine.
Well, it's one thing to screw up, but it's the important thing is, what do you do afterwards?
Yeah, exactly.
So you and Jasper are both UK based, and Jeremy's a transplant.
Jeremy's a transplant. Jeremy's also in the UK currently. He moves around a bit, and then I'm in South Africa, but with the pandemic, I haven't been able to go home, so we just wait.
Well, so I guess like the reason why I ask, because that means like the three of you have very different perspectives because of that, because you all come from very different backgrounds.
Hello, am I back?
You are back.
Yes.
Woo-hoo, success.
I'm gonna go landscape.
Awesome.
Boom.
Yeah, we all are from very different backgrounds. Jeremy, we were just sort of saying that, we've got one Brit, one American Brit, and one South African. So it makes for like a pretty nuanced and varied set of perspectives.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think that's part of what makes the show more engaging. I think that diversity of perspectives, for sure.
Yeah. Because I'm coming with like all of my own stuff from the sort of the continent, but like fairly newly free, largely colonized continent. And then there's also then the African American experience, and then as well as the Black British experience, which I'm learning loads more about because it's also in depth and varied in itself. So
you bet. That's actually a really interesting one, the Black British experience, because I think. You don't really see much depiction of the Black British experience. You see a ton of depiction of the Black American experience in popular media, but like a lot of times if Black British people are in like American media at all, they're playing Black Americans.
Yeah.
And I think the fact, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, and the content that is out there is usually like broadcast to BBC and Channel 4. So it kind of stays in the city on the island. But like, I think Small Axe, which is really good, which came out with Letitia Wright recently, and John Boyega, that was phenomenal. That was just really, really phenomenal in understanding some of the contentions in sort of for the Black British experience and how that played out for a lot of them. It's really and superb filmmaking.
I think you're starting to see more and more Black Britain gaining a voice and representation, because like you don't even hear about the history. Really, it's really interesting. Like a lot of the biggest icons over here are Americans. Black Americans.
Yeah, the thing is, British people are hella polite, and I'm not putting this at the feet of sort of like the Black British experience. What I am saying is that like there's so coming from South Africa, I would say that I came from a colony, yes. And back in South Africa, racism is still in your face, and those effects and that history is still very much talked about because it happened so quite recently, obviously for a long time, but quite new in terms of our liberation. I think we're like 25 years old, something like that. And whereas in the UK, there's the UK is the head office, and they've got a really, really good HR department and an excellent PR team. And they're very good at keeping things under the rug and stiff upper lips. And that's why it doesn't get out. And I found it really fascinating because when I was doing drama school here, we have a thing called Americans term, and that's the first time that on our course, although like the course was an acting course, that was the first time like racism was brought up, but it was brought up through an American lens. And then on top of that, when I was doing my research, just like trying to go to like libraries, the library at my university, and then also obviously using the internet, it was interesting that when I was searching for information about the Black British experience, it was so much harder to find. And like the key, like the algorithm immediately pops up the American experience, or like you can find swaths of information about, you know, like South Africa or Australia, but what they're doing, you have to go to the British Library or buy specific books written by POCs who are trying to tackle the issue. Like, it's so well managed. The HR department here is slick.
That is some crazy HR judo, where you're like racism, and they're like, you mean that American thing?
There is no racism in Ba Sing Se.
Well, the thing is that like, didn't Boris Johnson the Tory government make that entire report that says there is no systemic racism in the UK, and we're all just supposed to be like, what? Like, no, dude.
I mean,
they had an actual racism
and then
report.
it's true. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah. I mean, every government pretty much does the same thing.
Yeah, it's true.
What was it when? I guess it was like, I forget, but there was a meme going around. It was probably something that Trump said, and it was like, and like all the memes were like, Cobra Commander has investigated and decided, or you know, Megatron says the Decepticons.
Yeah, exactly. The Decepticons are fine. There's no issue with evil in the Decepticons. Yeah, that's great. It's true. Yeah, it really is that kind of a scenario. I think it's also like the fact that in America, our civil rights movement was so publicized worldwide. Like, it was like a big deal. Like what was happening in like the 60s in the US, I think was a big deal around the world at the time. Similar to how what was happening in South Africa, especially in like the 80s, became a really big deal. But I don't think you ever had that with Britain, even though there were riots. And like I've seen, there were riots and stuff. They just didn't get publicity. Really, yeah. Her Majesty's HR, man.
We don't talk about it. I feel like it's like pervasive throughout all of, you know, the UK and British lives, right? And like in everything, they just tend to be more reserved, and like you said, the, you know, stiff upper lip kind of thing. Like you know, Nord Games, like they have a partner that is from the UK, and they were telling me that like they were hanging out one time, and you know they were here and they're in the grocery store together, and you know, and Chris is just like, you know, excuse me, grabs a thing, moves on, and then you know, his partner from the UK is just like, holy fuck, I would have, you know how much time I waste waiting for someone to get their thing and move? we would never even think about intruding.
Yeah. It's like a weird, I think the saying is that Americans and Brits are like, what is it? We're separated by a common language or something like that. There's like a whole, like all of the terms and just the tone of the cultures are so different that it really is like and especially English people. I think especially like Southern English people tend to be a lot more reserved in comparison to Americans in general.
I think it has a lot to do with the wet and the damp. It's always very damp and clammy.
And the Queen. I think you
Queen.
can't like the influence of the royal family and like the whole idea of this, as you were mentioned, stiff upper lip. Like, no, we must not. We are English. We only show affection to dogs and horses. Like, there is no the Queen doesn't say it, like doesn't what was the controversy back when Princess Diana died and the Queen like was trying to remain reserved and everything, and there was the huge controversy about that at the time. It's the keep calm and carry on culture. Big time.
As Americans we tend to be a bit louder and more obnoxious, and then like depending on what coast you're on, it might get even more loud and obnoxious.
Yeah. Whoa, you know what's interesting though? You know how Americans have like the reputation as the ugly American, like when you go abroad?
Yeah.
Like the dude who walks in there, Brits have the same thing, bro. In Europe specifically, like they have a reputation for getting, because I think what it is, a lot of it is the drinking. In Europe, like people will drink and they'll get drunk and stuff, but in Britain, there's a big culture of just getting destroyed. Like especially amongst like younger people, they love to just get obliterated, and so like they'll go to other countries and then just absolutely annihilate themselves with alcohol, and then just cause all sorts of ruckus. And so they actually
like to riot after their sporting events too. Like we do too, but not to the like we're amateurs.
Yeah, we don't have like the football hooligan thing. We gotta work on our hooliganism.
I mean, in Philadelphia, we're close. Like we did pelt Santa Claus with batteries. So
what that happened?
I forget. I think I want to say it was. I think it was hockey, but I'm not really much of a sports person. But like, I'm even like, it definitely happened, and I'm like, why did they all have batteries?
Like, where did these batteries come from?
People just carry batteries with them in case they need it for pelting.
Yeah, like Santa. Like was. You remember when they had that hitchhiking robot that was like going around?
No.
Oh, so there was like this like friendly hitchhiking robot, and it would move from like city to city, and it got to like Philadelphia, and they like trashed it.
Oh no, that's amazing.
We're kind of terrible in this area. But...
So is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia a surprisingly accurate portrayal?
It may be a bit of a parody of what is actually like in the city of brotherly love. Like we live we're in New Jersey, but we're just like we're in South Jersey, which is like I'm like 30 minutes from the bridge from Philadelphia, and Ted's place where we film is like probably 15 minutes from the bridge, even closer. So we're pretty close, and like Jersey splits down the center. So like when it comes to sports, so South Jersey, follows all the Philadelphia sports teams, and then North Jersey follows all the New York sports teams. And also like when you hear like that really tropey accents and stuff from New Jersey, that's really all North Jersey, not really South Jersey. And then there's a Central Jersey that some of us agree exists and some of us don't. So, like, if you're from South Jersey or Central Jersey, you say there's a Central Jersey. If you're from North Jersey, it doesn't exist. Because if you're in Central Jersey, you don't want to be part of North Jersey. And if you're in South Jersey, you want another buffer between you and North Jersey. So,
okay.
Regional stuff's weird.
Yeah. Is it like how in New York, if you're in New York City, upstate New York is basically like the rest of the state? Yeah. Whereas if you're outside of New York City, upstate New York is a very specific region, like at the north of the state.
That is probably accurate. So
yeah.
Well, you know what? Really upstate New York is really weird. Like to me, like the accent is really weird. Because I used to do like work up there, and they have like this southern twang, but it's like it reminded me like Terrence and Phillip from South Park. Like the show, and like when they would talk, it would all sound like that to me because they're so close to Canada. So it was like this mix of the Canadian accent with this southern twang, and it's like creates this like really unique accent of its own. And I was like, the first time I heard it, I was like, whoa, I feel like I'm in a South Park episode now.
Yep.
Did all of their heads like split in half when they spoke as well?
So you're just waiting for that to happen,
Yeah.
And just like that, we had a tangent.
Yeah.
Yay! Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's pretty much what our show is like.
Yeah, we're pretty much known for that as well, especially in the early days of Nerdarchy. We've gotten a little bit tighter in our content more recently, but there used to be like 4 of us, and it was literally I've gone back to listen to some of that stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, how could anybody listen? This is terrible. It's just us yelling over top of each other.
4 people just screaming for an hour.
Yeah, pretty much. And also, like, when you say tangents, it was like more tangent than topic.
Okay,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
It's like the
ratio
Pirates of the Caribbean pirate code. Like, it's really a guideline.
Yeah.
Rule. The topic is a suggestion more than an actual discussion point.
Yeah.
So I had asked Unani if she had a favorite segment. What about you, Jeremy?
Ooh, on our show?
Yeah.
I guess in terms of repeating segments, it would be Tales from the Table. I have enjoyed. There's been an ongoing saga with this game that I'm running that Unati is in, where one of the players has just had the
wow.
If I'll tell some of it now, if you want to hear it, it is it's absolute madness. What has occurred?
Go for it.
So this is like it's like a gothic horror noir type setting, like in a big city, but it's also like steampunk. There's like elements of steampunk and then like a lot of like magical technology stuff. And this character is the son of like the fantasy version of the Pinkerton Agency. Like the guy who founded the Pinkertons, like Alan Pinkerton. In this version, it's called the Phoenix Agency, but it's the same kind of thing. Like they're a private law enforcement agency who work like they do strike breaking and like security and surveillance, investigation work. They're feared because there's a ton of agents, and they have like they've gotten in with like the upper levels of the government and have all these concessions that they're allowed to do that really they should not be allowed to do. And he wanted to be like a secret agent type character / well, not even secret agent, a detective. But rather than picking like a rogue or something that would give you all of the skills necessary to be an effective detective, he decided to go with fighter because he really wanted extra attack. Yeah. But what that meant was outside of a battle, he was an absolute keystone cop. Like he could not make it through a combat. He couldn't lie to save his life. He couldn't investigate to save his life. It was he didn't have
extra attack.
It was a nightmare, and he eventually got killed once. The resurrection is extremely easy in this world because like people have figured out how to like basically mechanize magic. Like there's like you can pay to be resurrected, but he got beaten to death by a bunch of undead acrobats. And then
that's very specific.
Yes, it was like the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, except turned into a whole circus. And if Cesare was actually a zombie instead of just a somnambulist. But there was like he died then, and then like I think it was 2 weeks later in game time, he got killed again by this a vampire spawn. And it was like a battle where he has the ability to light, kind of like flame on like the Human Torch, and he like chased this thing into a heavily forested garden and had accidentally lit the whole place on fire. And there was a point at which she realized that she could survive the fire, but he couldn't. And so she grappled him and dragged him into the flames. And he ended up dying again, at which point it was 2 weeks apart. His parents were like, look, son, this is a problem. We can't keep letting you die like this. We have to save you from yourself. And so they sent him away. And then the player had to introduce another character who then was promptly killed by a vampire and turned into a vampire by himself. And this is in large part due to the player's decisions. And it has just been the biggest fiasco trying to get this guy to have a character who can stick in this world and actually survive beyond like 3 or 4 sessions. Oh,
I'm picturing the investigations like they've got their hand on the hilt of their sword the whole time, or pointing at the person being interrogated the whole time. Because they don't know how to actually investigate.
Exactly.
It's just a threat.
They have in this world, they have like zone of truth rooms. So like the police can take you into it when they interrogate you, they just take you into a zone of truth room, and you're supposed to like fail the saving throw and then say the truth in order for them to get statements. But yeah, it's a whole nightmare. It's a real nightmare, I gotta say.
Yeah. I know.
Zone of truth doesn't sound like it should be admissible in a court of law.
It is coercive. There is no question. It is definitely coercive. And then like you have the Phoenix agency employees are allowed to cast not have non-detection cast on them, so you have no record of like what they've done, and they also can like use modified memory on people.
Man, this is feeling way too real.
Yeah, they're not a good agency. They're not a good agency at all.
Yeah. It's fun. It's lots of fun. I enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't poke fun at the terrible things in your life, what can you poke fun at? So
yeah.
Exactly. That's kind of the whole point of the show, I think, as Unati was saying earlier.
We have this race called the Vargarians, and they basically assemble constructs and then disassemble them to make Arcana cyborgs, essentially. But they're like our version of the Borg, right? So we call them kind of like Arcana Borg, if you would. But they came about because like there was this racist skinhead that was really popular on YouTube that we ran afoul of, and like he showed up on one of our videos and he said something horrendous, so like I blocked him or something. So he then like did a video response, and then like all of his people showed up on one of our videos, and it was like, oh, no. I think it was like at 666 dislikes. Someone's like, I really want to dislike this, but I don't want to break the number. And so like we turned them into a villain. We turned that person into a villain in our world. And so the Vargarians believe that that it's that bigotry is the problem. So if we make everybody alike and suck them into our collective, then it'll bring about, universal peace and understanding. But you don't have a choice in it. So
yeah. It's like the Great Uniter Legend of Korra, kind of like we're safer together. So we all have to be together.
Whether you like it or not. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely get that. I like to take things that annoy me in real life and then like insert them into my D&D game and make it feel like I have powers in some way over it.
Yeah, I did that with a guy who used to bully me in high school. He like showed up and was originally kind of a villain in like the first campaign I ever ran. But then he ended up like surviving and becoming like this Rambo type figure who ended up like having like a weird pseudo romance with one of the PCs. So like this guy who was originally somebody that I didn't like turned into like this beloved NPC who just kept showing up in like the weirdest places, like just like clinging to a tree or like suspended from a roof, like, hey, and they're like, ah! And when they enter a room. But yeah, it's fun to do that sometimes.
Yeah, it's great. I did that with colonization. I was just like, what if Shaka Zulu had all the power of the ancestors? There we go. We'll solve that problem. I've worked through that trauma now.
Yeah. D&D is great for that, for re-envisioning things. Way like from the motherland, I believe like that's kind of like part of the premise behind that, right? Is like if you're removing all colonization and this is how things would progressed if it wasn't there.
Yeah. So
I had a question and I completely fell out of my head, which often happens. But what is some of the other like? I know what I wanted to ask you guys. Have you played with any other TTRPGs yet, or is it all D&D right now?
I like Call of Cthulhu. I've been looking at Starfinder because I want to play it. I've been looking at Exalted because I want to play like an OP anime person as well. So I bought that. And then my partner is trying to get me into Dungeon World and Blades in the Night.
Blades in the Dark.
Blades in the Dark. Yeah.
I haven't played it, but it's another Powered by Apocalypse game, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I just like CTRPG. I like rolling dice and pretending stuff and having powers. So if you give me a system I can do that in, I'm probably gonna do it.
The very first TTRPG that I ever played was actually one that was created by a friend of mine. It hasn't yet been released, but it's about to be later this month. It's called Paradox Perfect. It's a time travel RPG where like the original premise of the game was that you would go back in time and you're working for like a time agency that's supposed to like make sure that things stay the way that they are. But there's this evil agency called Paradox Perfect who would go back and try and change things to make the future perfect. But like you can choose whether to do this or not. But the idea is that you're supposed to go back in time and then something will have been changed and you have to then make it back the way it was. So the first time I ever played, Paradox Perfect had saved JFK. And we had to choose whether we wanted to go back in time and help save JFK or make sure JFK died. And it's completely bonkers. The game nowadays has moved away from like those sorts of weird conundrums to just like crazy time travel shenanigans, like something in the past was changed maybe by accident and you have to go figure out what it was and make sure that things you can either choose to go into the new future or like revert things. We actually played it on the show in an episode. I guess I'll announce it. We had a couple of guests. Unati was playing, I was DMing it, and we had the guests Draconic Drac from the UK. He's a TTRPG streamer. Shout out to Drac. And none other than Brennan Lee Mulligan from Dimension 20. He played with us, and it is complete madness. Complete and utter madness.
So basically,
that's coming out next week, actually.
If you ever want to basically play your own version of the Loki series, that game would be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, legitimately, I was talking to my friend about it. There are so many parallels with Loki, even like in the game, even the session that we ran. There's like some strong parallels. Unati, have you watched Loki yet?
No, and I have no intention to. I can't
There's a scene.
Tom Hiddleston.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a scene in Loki that is like straight up a scene from the session that we ran. Awesome. So yeah, it's a fun game.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty common trope. I mean, you had it throughout the Doctor Who series, Heroes of Tomorrow, and there's probably tons and tons of others. But it's definitely fun. Time travel is so tricky.
Yeah.
That's why Paradox Perfect is as bonkers as it is, because they're just like it's basically the scene in Looper when the two when Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis are sitting there in the cafe, and Bruce Willis is like, "Look, we can sit around here trying to figure out the mechanics of this thing, drawing diagrams on napkins for the next 6 hours, or we can just accept that things are the way that they are and we just go with it." And that's pretty much the premise of Paradox Perfect. It's just like, yeah, it's all one timeline. It'll reset along the way. Just go with it. It's fun.
It's fun.
It's so exciting for me as being someone who's been in the hobby for so long, seeing the new gamers come in and jump into running games so quickly. It feels like players nowadays will jump in and start GMing much sooner than they used to. Like before, it felt like it was like some kind of like, I don't know, arcane rite of passage you had to go through in order to flip to the other side of the screen, and oftentimes like self-imposed. And now to see new players coming into the hobby and just jumping in and playing, or like you said, you played a couple games and you grabbed one of your friends like, we should play this. And so apparently your friend was new too. So one of you had the GM for the first time, it sounds like, and just make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just say thank goodness for the apps and the dice rollers. That for me was like one of the things that just made things so much simpler. Was like, right, I don't have to carry. I mean, I have bought many dice, but I don't have to carry all of my many dice, and I don't have to count all of them. And something will do the maps for me. Great, awesome. Like that. That's really that's a barrier. That's a barrier to entry that was just removed for me. Because I was like, well, cool. Then I can just focus on the narrative and the cool story, and then let the math. Let my phone do the math rock stuff. It's fine.
Now,
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, now I know we're in, we're still like close to the end times and kind of in the end times. But pre-end times, did you guys play together in person, or has it always been over the internet?
I've played in person.
I haven't played in person with Unati except for the very first Paradox Perfect, Cobb and the Caterpillar Wagadu stream. That was the one time that we've played in person. But yeah, I used to always play in person. We never did remote games until I think the first time we ever did a remote game was when I was on tour with a play. I think that was when we started doing it, and then we had to continue doing it once lockdown started. But that, like, 2020 was pretty much when I started doing that. And I was actually going to say, in regards to your point about people, I think, starting to DM sooner, one thing that made a huge difference for a lot of people is the advent of shows. Yeah, like, I think as much as it mystifies those figures who are DMing, it demystifies the idea of DMing. Because I think people are now like, ooh, I can do that. I think that would be that's my impression, because when I would see it, I would be like, oh, okay, so that's how you do it. Oh, okay, well, cool, I can do that. That was kind of my feeling when watching some of those shows.
Yeah.
Well, we are up on the hour mark. Final thoughts from each of you before we head on out?
Play D&D, be kind to each other, and hydrate.
Yeah, I'll quote Bill and Ted. Be excellent to each other and rock on, dudes.
Nice. As always, folks, links are in the description. Please go check them out and follow them. This has been a blast. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.